I got to introduce our speaker this evening. Jim Colbert came to us from Cedar Rapids after completing his undergraduate degree at Iowa State. He went on to get a master's and a PhD in plant biology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His first faculty position was at Colorado State University. In '98, he returned to Iowa and became a faculty member at Iowa State University, taught biology for 33 years and
Well, I got here in '88, but that's fine.
arithmetic here. And did research in various aspects of biology, most recently on diversity and distribution of lichens. We'll learn about that here shortly. He was the director of the undergraduate biology program for 15 years. During that time, he conceived of and led the Skunk River Navy. Over 20 years, he approximately 2,400 ISU biology students helped remove 80 tons of trash from local streams, including the South Skunk River. As I look around the room, I'm relatively sure there's at least 5 or 6 of us that were part of that at some point or another, either in the earlier days or whatever. A lot of fun cleaning up rivers, but man, it got out of control when there got to be 100 and some students wearing flip-flops and thinking that this was a sporting event or something. That all being said, I want to welcome Jim Colbert. 2 things. One, before he gets up here, well, as he gets up here. One is he's also a new board member on the Outdoor Alliance of Story County, new meaning last fall sometime. And he's also a new board member at the Story County Conservation. And so we will be seeing a lot of him in different parts of his fun retirement career. And that with all of that, please welcome Jim Colbert, and he'll talk to us about the lichen.
Thank you, John.
Lost lichen.
The lost ones. Thanks, John, for the introduction, and thank you all for coming out to hear about Iowa's lost lichens. Let me be sure everything's working the way it's supposed to. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's some lichens. All I want you to notice here is lots of different shapes, textures, colors. They're beautiful. They're also mostly small, so they get ignored a lot. And there's a lot of them. Worldwide, 20,000 lichen species have been named. Because they're small, thank you for that. Because they're small and they're easily overlooked, there's probably a lot more than that. That's what we know about now. Let me also be really clear here. Spelling matters. Okay? Lichen is short for lycanthrope, which is the fancy word for werewolf. And I want to be really, really clear here. There is not a retired ISU faculty member who's studying werewolves, okay? So we're talking about this kind of lichen. So the first thing to learn about lichens, they're not plants, okay? So just file that away permanently in your brain. They aren't plants. Here's what they are. They're a symbiotic association between a fungus, which is called the mycobiont, and a green alga or a cyanobacterium. And to be honest, sometimes both, but we're not really going to talk about that. That's called the photobiont. Most of the fungal species are members of this group of fungi. That's the group that includes morels. That would be the one that would be, most familiar. A small fraction, 50 species out of 20,000, have basidiomycetes as their mycobiont. That's the group that includes pizza mushrooms. So almost all lichens are an ascomycete fungus. Each lichen has a distinct species of fungus, and by convention, the scientific name of the fungus is used as the scientific name of the lichen. And that's because relatively few photobiont species are involved in lichen relationships. So just as an example, you could have 100 different lichen species, and each one would have the same species of photobiont. Is this lichen symbiosis an example of a mutualism or a parasitism? So let me just define those real quick. Mutualism, both parties benefit. Parasitism, one party benefits and the other party wishes they weren't benefiting. Okay? So another way to phrase this question is, what do the microbiont and the photobiont actually get out of the relationship? And the photobiont primarily gets protection. And it's probably the most important part is protection from desiccation, from drying out and dying. So that's pretty important. The microbiont gets food. As you probably are quite aware, green algae and cyanobacteria carry out photosynthesis. Just like plants, they produce food. And the microbiont takes about half of the food that the photobiont produces. So the photobiont gets protection, the microbiont gets food. And here's probably the sort of take-home message. The lichen can live in habitats that neither the fungus nor the photobiont could live on their own. So they can only exploit that habitat by working together. So most people regard the lichen symbiosis as a mutualism. Both parties are benefiting. So an easy way to think about this is basically lichens are fungi that practice agriculture. They're not really all that much different than us in corn, right? And, we plant corn, provided a nice place to live, and then we steal all the corn babies for our own purposes, right? I mean, that's the way that relationship works. And of course, they're very cute. I'm speaking of the lichen here, of course. All right, next question. How many types of lichens are there in Iowa? So it turns out, best estimate we have about 465 different lichen species. So let me ask you all a question. How many bird species are there in Iowa? Anybody know? Ballpark? Anybody want to hazard a guess? What's that?
1,000.
1,000? That's a very good guess. I will tell you it's less than that. 400 is really a good guess. It's probably around 450, okay? That includes bird species that live here all year. It includes bird species that nest here, bird species that just migrate through, and even a few that just occasionally are here. But here's the point. Think about all the birds you've seen. Crows, house sparrows, blue jays, pileated woodpeckers, Canada geese. It seems like a lot, doesn't it? It's a lot to keep track of. And the point is, guess what? There's as many lichens as there are birds in the state. So the diversity of lichens is about the same as the diversity of birds in Iowa. So this is one of Iowa's native lichens. It has this fabulous name, Flavoparmelia caparata. One of the common names for it is green shield lichen. And if you think about it, these symbiotic organisms that are living together, and they live together and they form what appears to be a single species that we call a lichen. Somehow it just seems kind of unusual, right? So I've got another question for you. Are you willing to help me? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to look in here and tell me how many species you see. Just grab a hold of it. How many do you see? She says one. Just hang on to it. We'll come back to this. Okay, oops, my thing won't work from here. Hang on. All right. This is not for you. This is for the rest of them. Now they have to answer, okay? How many species do you see here? And don't look at the grasses or the trees behind there. How many species do you see? One, okay? Here's the thing. Counting its gastrointestinal bacteria and a whole bunch of other associated microbes, that elk, that thing that we think of as one species and that we give a scientific name to, is not one species. It's really a community. It's many species. Look back in your mirror. How many species do you see now? All right. So here's the thing. The next time you look in the mirror, realize in terms of numbers of cells in your body, not just you, all of us, you are half human. One half of the total number of cells in your body are human cells. The rest are a bunch of thousands of different species of bacteria, fungi, and other kinds of organisms. Now, that's on a number basis. On a mass basis, other than about 5 or 6 pounds, you're all human, okay? The rest of you is all human. On a mass basis, you're mostly human. But on a number of cells basis, you're only half human. And that's true of us. It's true of elk. It's true of every animal you've ever met. It's actually even true of plants. They're not just one thing either. So here's the thing. Lichens aren't actually unusual. This is the usual case for large organisms that we are a community, an ecosystem of more than one species. The only thing that's really unusual about lichens is they just have 2 or 3 or maybe 4. We're not going to talk about that either. They're simple examples of something that's actually very common. All right. Why learn about lichens? I'm sure you all have your own answers to that question coming out tonight in this. I'm not going to call it cold because it's above 0, so chilly weather. Why learn about lichens? Well, number one, lichens are part of Earth's biodiversity, just like these things that are way more familiar. You know, if I show you a picture of this, you're going to say, oh, that's a cottontail rabbit, or that's a bottlenose dolphin, or that's a panda, or that's some kind of penguin. I'm not sure which species. But you wouldn't say that if I showed you a picture of a lichen. You just wouldn't. You'd be lucky if you recognized it as being a lichen. But lichens are just as much a part of the biodiversity of planet Earth as any of these species. Lichens also have significant ecological roles. First of all, they're just about everywhere, except underwater, and there's some exceptions to that too, but mostly they're not underwater, including the bark of the trees out in the parking lot, okay? Lichens are able to survive in an incredible range of habitats. So tree bark, we already mentioned, they can grow on bare wood, they can grow on soil, they can grow on rocks, they can grow on concrete. I guarantee you, you have walked on lichens. They're common, not on brand new concrete, but on older concrete. They can even grow on human-made materials, old tires, chunks of metal, plastic. Unbelievable. Think about those habitats that these lichens are able to exploit. A lot of species of lichens are found in rather high light intensity dry habitats, but there's also lichens that can be found in shady, damp habitats. Some lichens can do this very interesting and important biochemical trick. They can take molecular nitrogen out of the air, which is very common, 78% of our atmosphere, and totally unusable to biological organisms, at least most biological organisms. And oh, by the way, also absolutely required for biological organisms. These lichens can convert that atmospheric nitrogen into biologically useful forms. So they can contribute to the nitrogen balance of the ecosystem that they're living in. One of the most important roles that lichens are often recognized for is they're something called ecological pioneers. So think about a habitat that has undergone some massive change. Maybe there was a forest fire. Maybe there's retreating glaciers and rocks that haven't been exposed to the air and to the sunlight for perhaps thousands of years are appearing out of that melting ice. Or perhaps there's a volcano that's erupting and is producing lava, and that lava, flows down the side of the mountain, cools, solidifies. You have this new habitat. It turns out that lichens are amongst the species that will be able to first establish themselves in those kinds of habitats. Lichens are also amazing because they are truly tough. Lichens have gone to space. Some species of lichens that grow on rocks in the Antarctic, the part of the Antarctic that's not covered by ice, the Antarctic Peninsula, were transported up to the International Space Station by the European Space Agency. Now you're probably thinking, okay, they shot rocks with lichens on them up to the space station. Big deal. The lichens were put outside the space station, not inside. So they were exposed to extreme cold, the vacuum of outer space, the full intensity of solar radiation, and not for 15 seconds, for a year and a half. Not something you should try at home. I guess you couldn't try it at home because you'd have to be at the space station to try this. They survived. Those lichens were brought back to Earth, given water, given reasonable temperatures. And given light, what did they do? They started carrying out photosynthesis and growing. Not an easy trick. These guys are tough. Oops. Anyway, these are some of the things that I really like about lichens and some of the things that I think are coolest about them. They're always there. Not like those pansy spring wildflowers that Greg's going to show you. They're only there for like 2 weeks out of the year. Go out and see some hepatica or some Dutchman's breeches or some trout lilies or whatever. Lichens are always there. Winter, spring, summer, fall. They are literally outside right now. One other really important reason to learn about lichens. Almost nobody can tell you you're wrong, okay? They'd at least have to do some significant Googling. As far as I know, everything I've told you is true, but you could Google it and check. Okay. We haven't said anything about lost lichens yet. So let's think about that, being as that's the title. So Iowa's been a state for a long time on a human time scale, not a long time on a geological time scale, but 179 years. And during that time, as I'm sure all of you in here are aware, there have been some huge changes in land use. We have gained a lot of things. We've gained a whole bunch of corn and soybeans and cattle and pigs and roads and parking lots and malls and libraries. What have we lost in that 179 years? Well, here's some of the things we've lost. I'm sure these are all quite familiar, quite recognizable to you. All of these are native Iowa animals. I'm sure I don't even need to tell you their names, but bison were extirpated from the state in the late 1800s. Cougars, 1870s, black bears, late 1800s, wolves, late 1800s. Occasionally we have cougars wander back through. Occasionally we have black bears wander back through. Elk, this one's often surprising. We tend to think of elk as being western, maybe mountainous area species. Elk were common in Iowa. In the 1820s, there was an expedition of exploration across parts of Iowa. Some of you may have encountered signs reflecting that. The expedition didn't leave the signs, those were put in later. The Dragoon Trail, anybody see a Dragoon Trail sign anywhere? Okay, that's what they're talking about. These were the Dragoons. And in their journals, commonly saw elk, actually more commonly than they saw bison. These you probably recognize too. You may not know based on the current state of affairs. Turkeys were extirpated from Iowa. By the early 1900s, they were gone. I led a deprived childhood in eastern Iowa. I grew up in a state that had no turkeys. But in the early 1980s, efforts were made to reintroduce them. Now, there are places where you just basically trip over turkeys. Okay, they're quite common. Similar story with river otters. Extirpated from the state with the possible exception of along parts of the Mississippi River, but in the internal rivers, gone. They were also reintroduced in the 1980s. And today, it wouldn't be unusual at all to paddle down a river here in central Iowa and see an otter running across a sandbar or bobbing its head above the water. Why did we notice that those were gone? And the answer is probably just what you think it is, because they're big. And they're economically important or possibly annoying. So let's think about those elk for a minute. If you happen to go hunting and shoot an elk, your family had a huge economic benefit. You had stuff to eat for a long time. If that same elk wandered out into your oat field and your cornfield and trampled it all to nothing, that would be annoying. Either way, you noticed. And because it got noticed, these sorts of things were recorded in contemporary letters and journals, diaries, etc. What about little things? Smaller species that lack direct economic impact. What do we know about those? And as I'm sure you would guess, the answer is a lot less. So, for example, what about lichens? What do we know about them in terms of do we still have what we had in the past? So, some species of lichens are very common in Iowa. I mean, these two species you could literally go up to just about any tree in Ames and find. Physiostellaris here, gray. These maps were generated a while in the past. Where it's green, that species has been recorded for that county in Iowa. So Physiostellaris, I think we're Story County about here, definitely recorded there. Xantha Mendoza Phalax recorded over much of the state. So they're real common. These are everywhere, basically. But as you can see from this maps, there's still things we don't know. Oops. Oh, I have to push the right button. Anybody know the name of that county? What's that? It's close. Yep, it's Lee County. So according to this map, we're not sure whether Xantha Mendoza Phalax is found in Lee County. In fact, maybe even in all of southeast Iowa. And that's exactly why I had a graduate student who worked on determining lichen diversity in that part of the state. And guess what? Not surprising at all. Xantha Mendoza is in this county too, and in a number of the other ones around here. We didn't know that. We sure would have expected it because these lichens are so common. So Iowa does have a threatened and endangered species list. How many types of lichens are on that list? You guys don't all want to stand up and cheer now? Woohoo! No lichens on the endangered species list. Well, this news may not be quite as good as you're thinking. Um, so the question then is, if we say, well, Iowa that we know of has a diversity of somewhere around 465 different lichen species that we know were present. I'm gonna get back here to, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Um, are there any that aren't here anymore, which we call extirpated? And it turns out that question is harder to answer than you might imagine. So what we did was we looked at a lot of previous collections of lichens from Iowa. We did additional collecting, and together with my students, we identified 43 lichens that had been recorded for Iowa that had not been seen since 1960. That's 66 years ago. That's also almost 10% of the lichens recorded for Iowa. One of those lichens, one of my students actually rediscovered in 2018, but that still leaves 42 that are rare in Iowa or perhaps are extirpated from the state. In other words, these are candidates of lichen species that perhaps should be on the Iowa threatened and endangered species list, but currently are not. So I want to show you some examples. These are the things that you, as a person living in Iowa, should be able to go out and see, and you can't. Okay? Or at least it would be extremely rare. Check this thing out. Bushy beard lichen. Spectacular. Usnea strigosa. Collected in Iowa on 5 different occasions, most recently in 1896, a while back. Burning bush lichen. This one is really quite spectacular. I'm not sure the picture does it justice. It can get to be nearly the size of the palm of your hand. So it's a pretty big lichen. Collected in Iowa on 4 occasions, most recently in 1913. Chocolate chip lichen. Great name, huh? Solarina saccata. Has only been collected in Iowa on 1 occasion in 1956. Only record of this lichen in the state. Lungwort lichen. This one also is good sized, half the size of your hand or more. This was collected in Iowa on 3 occasions, actually in these 3 counties. So Dubuque County and Clayton County and Fayette County. Most recently, it was collected in 1901 at White Pine Hollow State Preserve. Anybody been to White Pine Hollow State Preserve? Awesomely cool place. If you haven't been there, you're making poor choices in life, and you should go there. Anyway, the reason that I am so specific here is that all of these old records where we've seen the specimen, we know it's correctly identified, they didn't have GPS. And they recorded typically very little in the way of geographic information. Best case scenario, they gave you the county they were in, okay? If you're looking for it again, that doesn't narrow things down very much. But this one did narrow it down to one particular locality, White Pine Hollow State Preserve. It was actually collected by Bohemil Shimmick, who was a University of Iowa faculty member. And anybody been to Shimmick State Forest? That's in Lee County. There you go. So a couple of you have. So anyway, we did some looking for lungwort. My students and I looked hard for this one. We carried out 92 miles of search effort. If you're familiar with Northeast Iowa, so these counties, Clayton County, Dubuque County, Fayette County, we looked in Allamakee County, it ain't Story County. It's not flat. And so And we weren't working on trails most of the time. We were bushwhacking, as they say. And this included White Pine Hollow State Preserve. In fact, a lot of our effort was at White Pine Hollow State Preserve. That's how many lungwort populations we found. 0. The thing you should really keep in mind about this is lungwort is a big lichen that likes to grow on tree trunks at around eye level. It's hard to miss, okay? We didn't find it. So very likely it's extirpated from Iowa. Very likely it falls into the same category as elk or as bison, species that we know were part of Iowa's native biodiversity and are no longer present in the state. Obviously, we could look at one more tree and find it, but looking at every tree in the state of Iowa seemed a bit much. Oops. I might have gotten a little carried away on the thing there. Let's see here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about why it is. Oh, sorry. I see. I still didn't do it right. Thank you, Greg. Are we back? We're back. Okay. Why'd we lose these? Well, that first one is huge, and that has impacted all kinds of species that were native to Iowa that no longer can be found in the state, habitat loss, and land use change. What I didn't tell you about lungwort lichen is an old growth forest specialist. How much old growth forest is there in Iowa? That is the correct answer, sir. 0. Okay. Yes, there's forests in Iowa, there's trees in Iowa, but they're all second or third or maybe even fourth growth. There isn't any old growth forest left in Iowa. It was all cut down. So that probably has a lot to do with why lungwort lichen is no longer found in Iowa. There's other possible reasons as well. Air pollution, you might think that's sort of surprising, but it turns out that a lot of lichens are quite sensitive to low air quality, and they can't grow in those circumstances. In fact, there's a lot of lichens that will not grow inside of towns and cities because of air pollution issues. Herbicides, a lot of herbicides target the biochemistry of photosynthesis. And where does the lichen fungus get its food? From a photosynthetic organism. So that could be a problem. Introduced species, maybe. We don't know of any examples of that. Climate change, changes in, lengths of winter and temperatures and all those sorts of things. All of those are possible. And it may vary quite a lot from one type of lichen to another as to what's most important. Could we reintroduce them? We've done it. With these species, we successfully reintroduced 2 really amazing native Iowa species, wild turkeys and river otters. Could we do that for lungwort? Could we? Should we? Try to reintroduce that lichen. It's possible that we don't really have suitable habitat for it. Lungwort lichen happens to be one of those lichens that is quite sensitive to air pollution issues. And so it just may be that it just can't make it here anymore, even if we tried to reintroduce it. We have not tried to reintroduce it, by the way. I also wanted to say just a word about this. So we have 3 state symbols, okay, that are biological. We have a wildflower, which is the wild prairie rose. We have a tree, which is oak, which I find a little offensive because there's a bunch of different kinds of oaks, so we don't know which one this is, but it's an oak. We have a specific bird, the goldfinch. Does Iowa have a state lichen? And the answer is no, but we should have. And this is the one it should be. So this lichen I showed you earlier is Telocystis chrysophthalmus. Feel free to call it goldeneye lichen. Recent collections have shown that this lichen is present throughout much of the state. It's not as common in the very northeast corner of Iowa, but it's quite visible, partly because it's so brightly colored. It's actually a lichen that you can identify with the naked eye. You don't need a magnifying glass or anything to see it. And of course, in deference to the fact that Iowa State's playing basketball tonight, it does have one of the team colors of both Iowa State and the University of Iowa. So, if you got any sway with the legislature, the last time they proclaimed a state symbol was, I think, in 1963. So they haven't done it for a while. If you have any sway, maybe we should have a state lichen. And you might be asking yourself, well, this is crazy. Does any state have a state lichen? And the answer is yes. California has a state lichen. They have a state lichen that is absolutely spectacular, but it doesn't grow here. But this one does. All right. So that concludes my formal and official remarks. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have about lichens or related sorts of things. So, yes.
What's the presence in southeastern Minnesota?
Lungwort lichen you're asking, not liverwort lichen, right? Okay.
Wisconsin, is it still present?
So let me paraphrase the question. The question is about lungwort lichen, and can you find it in other locations? And the answer is absolutely yes. Northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, through Michigan, over into Maine. There's a lot of places where there are quite healthy populations of lungwort, but this lichen also grows in Europe, and in several of the countries in Europe, it's listed as a endangered species. Again, it probably comes back to air pollution generally. This particular lichen, I guess I'll tell you. I don't want to hurt anybody, but this lichen actually has both a green algal photobiont and a cyanobacterial component as well. The cyanobacterial component is the part that can fix nitrogen, can take nitrogen out of the air and convert it to a biologically useful form. Those kinds of lichens that have a cyanobacterial component tend to be the ones that are most sensitive to air pollution. So, no, it's not globally extinct. There are places where it's fairly common. It used to be in Iowa, and it's probably not here now. That answer what you're asking?
Where's the next closest plant of it, right?
The next closest would probably be central Minnesota. Would be probably the closest place you could find some lungwort lichen, which actually leads to a question that you didn't ask, but I'll answer it anyway. How do they get around? And it turns out that lungwort lichen has 3 different means of reproduction, 2 asexual means and 1 sexual means. But most lichens don't disperse great distances quickly, and they also grow really slowly. So it may be that lungwort just hasn't managed to work its way back into Iowa, if there is even any suitable habitat. Yeah, that's also true. Same question. Did you tell her what you were going to ask, and then she took the question? Is that what happened? Yes.
Is this partnership a trick that evolved once or many times?
Oh, Dan, what a great question. Something else I was going to spare you of. Okay, so when people think about lichens, they think probably they started once. No. 19 separate evolutionary lines of fungi have developed the lichen habitat. That's just in the Ascomycetes. 2 more in the Basidiomycetes. Okay, so this habit of forming a lichen relationship with a photobiont is something that has evolved multiple times. So, it's so easy when you look at a lichen to think, oh, it's a lichen, they're all the same. No, they're actually not. They're different evolutionary lineages. Will you be able to sleep tonight okay? Because it bothers me. Go ahead.
What's the fungus known to tear up?
Oh, another question I was going to try to spare you of. Okay, so is everybody okay? This is the trigger warning, okay? Is everybody okay if we talk about lichen sex?
Go for it.
Okay, all right. So as long as everybody's okay, here's what happens when lichens reproduce sexually. So the fungal component of the lichen will produce structures that produce genetically distinct spores. Does the term meiosis mean anything to you? Okay, so they're producing the spores by meiosis. So they're genetically distinct. Those spores are tiny. 1 cell, 4 cells, maybe up to 50 or 100 cells, but they're little. They blow on the wind. You have been breathing lichen spores your entire life. You're breathing them right now, most likely, okay? So lichen spore floats along. Almost all of them land in a place that's not good, and they die. End of the story. Occasionally, one will land in a place that's good habitat for the lichen, and oh, by the way, there just happens to be some of the correct species of photobiont barely hanging on to life there. And they find each other, and nobody really knows the answer to this, but there's some sort of cell surface interaction where they recognize each other, and the fungus says, "You're the alga I've been looking for." And the alga says, "Well, I could pair up with a bunch of different fungi, but I guess you'll do." And so what they do then is they start this interaction, and that's what actually grows into the lichen. So the spore from a lichen doesn't grow into a lichen. It grows into a fungus that is in a very, very desperate situation of needing to find the right alga very quickly, or it will die. The other part of this is a lot of lichens reproduce asexually, and they produce specialized structures that have a small bit of the fungal component and a small bit of the algal component, and they're dispersed together, and they're able to grow directly into a lichen. And those are bigger. They probably aren't dispersed by wind very much. They can certainly be dispersed by water, like flowing down the surface of a tree, or if you had a squirrel running along a branch, it could get those caught between its toes and then climb up on some other branch and it falls off. And so that's the other approach. Does that answer what you're asking? Yes, sir.
Next question.
Yes.
How do you think we would ever possibly convince the state to have a state likeness? How would we convince them that this is something of value that we need to have?
Well, I can tell you the approach that I think makes sense. And I can also tell you that would probably make absolutely no sense to the state legislature. My thinking on this is we should be valuing, highlighting our biological inheritance, our biological diversity in this state. And I certainly wouldn't limit the list of our state species to the 3 we have plus lichens. I think we should have, a state fish and a state frog and a state turtle and a state mammal. And I don't care how long the list, a state stonefly, I don't know, whatever. But I think that's an argument that is likely to fall on deaf ears. But I suppose that, the way to approach it is, talk to people who are, say, in the Department of Natural Resources, try to find contacts that would be worth communicating with. I have not tried to do that. I'm just giving you my opinion here, but it would be a challenge. It's not something they're interested in doing.
You said it was 1960.
It was, I think that's right. Somebody Google it and find out, but it was a while ago.
But Yeah, you know, they all think they've got more important things to do, but that's not really no.
Well, you make a valid point, John.
I mean, just to go into.
Yeah.
That and say, we need to have a state like it.
I
Have a whole education.
mean,
You just.
I think the way to do it would be to really approach it as we need to highlight the biodiversity of the state and absolutely include lichens. That'd be my part. Yes, sir.
What's the slide?
Another good question I was going to spare you. So it turns out a lot of things, but they're almost all small. But let me start out with some examples that aren't small. Caribou, 80% of their diet, in the winter anyway. But here's the cool one. There is a primate, the Japanese snub-nosed monkey, that has a substantial fraction of its diet that is lichens. Okay. Most of the things that eat lichens, though, are little arthropods, insects. You can find places where snails have crawled over lichens, and they have that little rasp-like radula where they scrape off the lichen. A lot of species use lichens not necessarily as food, but as shelter, I guess you'd call it. I mean, just scale down your forest from, big trees down to these tiny little lichens. Well, there's little arthropods that are crawling around in there, living in there. There's one that, I can't think the name of it right now. There's one that's kind of common that's there. Oh, tardigrades. You guys know about tardigrades? A lot of tardigrades live under. If you want to see tardigrades, harvest some lichens, put them in a little dish with some water, and wait about 24 hours, and you'll have tardigrades crawling around. There are birds that use lichens in their nests. There are some insect species. It's a good thing you're sitting down here, Jeff. There are some insect species that literally grow lichens on their exoskeletons as camouflage. And other insect species that their normal pattern of development makes them look like a lichen. So there's actually lots of interactions, but they're all happening at a scale that's, so small from our perspective. It's not as obvious as a red-tailed hawk, taking apart a rabbit on a power line.
Are they rich in vitamins or minerals? Could they be harvested or grown even though they're small? Do we eat small
All right.
growing,
So
low growing?
the thing to remember about eating stuff is you can eat anything once. The question is, can you eat it twice? With a lot of fungi, the answer to that is no. But most lichens, at most, they might make you sick to your stomach or something. They're not lethal. They're not very digestible for us, but there are some exceptions. There's a group of lichens called something, I'll think of it, Bryoria, the horsehair lichens, that indigenous Americans used it's a common, fairly large lichen, and they used it as sort of kind of a main component of a soup or a stew. So yes, there are some examples of that. The primary economic human benefit of lichens in terms of economic activity is perfume production. So there are certain lichens that are harvested in large quantities. I don't know why or how or who figured this out. Who was thinking, you know what we should do? We should use lichens to make perfume, but somebody was. So particularly the European perfume industry uses a lot of lichens in their production. Yes. So the question is it because of the fragrance? I don't think so, but I don't really know for sure. Yes, what's your question?
It's because I was working on my master's thesis studying cemeteries.
Great place to look for lichens.
Certain, the goldish colored ones would
Probably xanthomendozas, but go ahead.
granite.
Do
certain lichens are attracted to certain?
Absolutely. What she's asking about is, do you see substrate preference amongst different lichens? And it turns out the big distinction is lichens that can grow on calcium-rich rocks like limestone or dolomite versus lichens that can grow on granitic rocks. There are some lichens that can grow on both, but some lichens can only grow on granitic rocks. They just will not grow on high calcium containing rocks and vice versa.
When I first started noticing these on different gravestones, then I brought a little eyepiece.
It's called a nerdoscope, but go ahead.
All of a sudden I went down, went down rabbit holes.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Rather than paying attention to what I was supposed to be.
So you were paying attention to the important stuff rather than, yeah, I get you. So she's not wrong. Once you start seeing lichens, you cannot unsee them. You will notice them. Once you start paying some attention, they really are lovely, but they're just at a size scale that's so small compared to us and compared to the things that we normally pay attention to that they're extremely easy to overlook. That answer what you're asking?
How do they project different colors? What is that?
So let me think a second how to answer that. Fungi are fabulous biochemists. They make all kinds of different compounds, including some that can kill you, or some that can make you think you're seeing things that you're not seeing, okay? All of those are possible. So amongst the things that they can make are various kinds of pigments. So without going into any of the names of the chemicals or whatever, those have, different colors. So there's a lot of oranges. There are some that are more gray or black in color. There are some that are sort of greenish or yellowish in color. There's a whole range of different pink. There's a whole bunch of different, and that's all got to do with the kinds of pigments that the particular fungus that's making up that lichen has the genetic capacity to synthesize, to biochemically produce.
So it just comes from the fungus.
Yeah. The alga is really the only pigments it produces are those that are associated with photosynthesis, so chlorophylls and carotenoids and so forth. Yep.
How can you tell the difference between like a lichen, a fungus, and bacteria if it's growing on something that you see?
It's a good question. So the easiest way to tell the difference between a lichen and what a lichenologist would call a non-lichenized fungus, meaning they're unimportant, which is definitely not true. But the easiest way to tell this is to have some sort of sharp blade or razor blade or something. And so just cut through it a little bit. And if you don't see any green, it's a non-lichenized fungus. If you do see green, then it has a photobiont and it's a lichen. Bacteria, it's pretty unusual to have, bacteria are very small. You can't see them with the naked eye, but you can see groups of them. You can see colonies of them. It's pretty unusual to see them as a colony anywhere other than in like a petri dish or something like
It's like
that.
something growing on the back of a cutting board. Didn't smell or anything.
And you didn't bring it to me to show me? Oh, okay.
Got rid of it. Not the cutting board. I washed it.
I would guess it was a non-lichenized fungus. Where was the cutting board stored?
It was just in my kitchen. It was
Yeah, but in it,
air.
oh,
Yeah, it was open air.
was there a lot of light?
Some,
Okay,
not direct sunlight.
probably wasn't a lichen. Needs to have light. Most likely. But the next time that happens, be sure and bring it for me to look at.
I'll dial you also.
Yeah, you can call, you can email the lichen emergency number. You'd be surprised, lichen emergencies occur almost never. Other questions? Thanks, this was fun.